chart, but not with all the fundamental stuff. Or you got a bunch of fundamental reports, maybe they have a little chart over here somewhere. So the product we created combined those two things, and it was unique and it was different. But all I was doing was taking all the variables that you'd want to see and put them together in one place. And I remember when we set out to sell that first book, I traveled around a lot of cities. And in Chicago, we sold a number of them, and the impression was always the same thing. They'd look at it, and 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 they'd say, well, this is really different. And yet they were kind of intrigued with it. And these would be fundamental guys, you know, that are buying because of the PE ratio, and particularly in Chicago, and that drove me nuts. Everyone I talked to was the same thing, you know, we're buying value and all of this stuff. But I'd show them this thing, and because it had earnings and everything else along there, they'd study it, and they'd say, well, we'll take it. And I think that some of them didn't know what they had, and some of them did, but it was just different. And nobody had something like that. Now that helped us when they went into this period, and I think you mentioned this a minute ago, about you used to have the fixed commissions, and now they were going to go into now the lower the better, and you can negotiate and all of that. A lot of firms had trouble because who needs 5 reports on IBM? And so now all of a sudden, all these competitors that were having analysts and writing reports all over the place, they started to struggle. And we never lost an account because our product was totally unique and different. In fact, I can remember that where we cut off some people because they hadn't been paying what they had agreed to pay. And when they came back and wanted to start back up, you know, they had to catch up and everything. Well, they couldn't get that product anywhere else because it was completely unique, and they kind of liked it. And it was because we combined all the fundamentals with the technical in one place, and nobody else had done that.
As long as I've known you, you've said it's mostly fundamental.
It is.
So how do you reconcile that? Why do you know? I know we use charts, and as you said, you have to look at them. But what's so important about the fundamentals?
Well, I think the way that we have come up with some names are because we see the chart, and then we go back, and first thing I do when I see whether it's chart or the old tapes that used to run across, if I see something that looks interesting, the first thing I do is how much are their earnings, and I'll go, what are the earnings right now in the current quarter, in the prior quarter, in the prior quarter, and then next, what are the earnings in the last 3 years, and then the sales, and then the return on equity, and I'll go through all this, and if it doesn't have it, I just forget it. So you sometimes can come up with the idea on the chart, but the thing that makes it go up is all the earnings and the product. And I'm not going to buy it just because the chart looks good. So it's a combination of those things that, wow, it's acting great, and the demand is there, and the earnings are up 100%, and the return on equity is 40%. A couple of my biggest winners were stocks that had a 50% return on equity, and the earnings are growing 100%. And so it's those powerful fundamentals that make the stock double and triple. So actually, I think we're fundamentalists, and probably some of the better fundamentalists in the country, because we're looking for who's got the best product and the biggest earnings and biggest sales and biggest profit margins. And so some people see a chart and say, oh, well, these guys are chartists. Well, they don't, everything